Alright, so for this video, I'm going to be talking about the logistics of the PNT pretty much as a whole. I made a similar series of videos for the CDT 2 years ago, and each video was dedicated to like one subject, and I'm too lazy to make that many videos again, so I'm just going to condense everything into this one probably pretty long video. So because of that, I'm going to be putting the timestamps again in the description of this video, so make sure you just look at that right now so you can skip around the video and listen to what you want to listen to. Alright, so first subject is going to be bushwhacking, and this is probably the part of the trail that every PNT hiker hates the most. Some of the bushwhacks are unavoidable, you're gonna have to do it. Other ones you can have the option to like kind of get around it, but expect to do some pretty slow moving when you're bushwhacking. Probably under a mile an hour for some of these bushwhacks. It's really that slow. A lot of people hate road walking, but after doing the CDT 2 years prior to this trail, I actually didn't mind it. Some of them did kind of suck because it was just, you know, paved road, it was really hot, and some of them are pretty dangerous. I remember the one going westbound into Northport. The road is like curved like an S, and there's no shoulder to walk on, and you're just going around like these blind corners, cars are flying by, there's semi-trucks on that road. Some people have told me that they've seen hikers just get hitches around all the road walks or the bad ones like that. Personally, I'm not gonna do that because that's just skipping way too many miles, but I don't know, to each his own. There's gonna be dirt road walks, those aren't bad at all. I mean, to me, that's kind of like a trail. I would say that 15 to 20% of the 1,200 miles of the PNT is road walking, so that's a decent amount. So just make sure you have like some music or some podcast with you just to help you kill the time on those walks. All right, how many people hike the PNT each year? I don't have the accurate numbers, but I'm willing to guess it's maybe around 100 try the trail every year, and only a fraction of those people actually finish the trail. Don't expect to see many people on the PNT, especially if you're hiking alone or you hike really fast or really slow. I hiked the whole trail with people, but if I didn't, I probably would have went quite a few days without even seeing another human being. That's just how, you know, quiet and desolate this trail is. So yeah, there's not many people on PNT. This is probably the one thing that kind of sets the PNT apart from all the other long trails, like the AT, PCT, CDT, is that you actually get to walk along the coast, right along the ocean. It's pretty sweet, and it's nice to actually do something and see something that's different. Kind of like the bushwhacking, just expect to move a little slower. You're gonna be walking on soft sand a lot of the time, so it's kind of hard to put down a good pace on that. Another thing you gotta worry about is the high tides, especially at the Olympic coast in Washington. Definitely download a tide chart, just Google it and save it to your phone. That's what I did. And just look at it and find out when the high tides and low tides gonna be. You don't wanna get swept out to the ocean because you're probably gonna die. Now, if the tide's coming in and you're wondering how you get away from that, the Olympic coast, they have like these circular markers, like near the woods, and that's just a marker to let you know that that's where you can get up and out of there. Yeah, that's really your only option to get on out of there. Alright, the time zone. I'm just going to talk about this real quick because this is the trail that goes east-west, west-east, so that means that you actually walk from one time zone into another, unlike a lot of the other popular trails. You go westbound, once you get to around Idaho, you're gonna go into the Pacific time zone, so you actually gain an hour, which is pretty sweet. Just remember to set your clocks back on your watch or whatever. I remember on that day we were actually trying to do a lot of miles, so it was kind of cool to get an extra hour of time at the end of the day just to push like, you know, 3 or 4 more miles. This trail is called the Pacific Northwest Trail, which means that it's gonna be kind of rainy out there. Because of that, I recommend you get some good weather gear. When it rains, it can pour on you pretty good, but I don't really think I had that many downpours. This also depends on when you start. There's gonna be less rain in the earlier mid parts of summer, June, July, August. So I'd say it probably rained maybe 10, 12 times on my hike. Other than that, I don't really remember that many super hot days. Some of the roadblocks got hot. That's only because there was no shade. I don't think I had any cold days or nights, but I don't really sleep cold, so I guess that's kind of subjective. Overall, the weather on this trail isn't too bad. It's kind of a short trail, which means you can pick the best weather window, so you don't have to deal with super hot weather or super cold weather. Alright, how to get to and from the trail. Unfortunately, I don't really have that much advice on this subject. Getting to Glacier, I flew from Boston to Spokane, Washington, and then from Spokane I took the Amtrak to East Glacier. From East Glacier I got a shuttle to the border. Now, finishing the trail, we were kind of worried about how we would get back to a town. Lucky for us, we met a guy. Shout out to Chris, you're probably watching this video, but he was watching my videos and we actually ran into him in the Olympic National Park, and he offered to come out and give us a lift once we finished the trail, so we kind of got lucky in that regard. Now, before that, our plan was just to get to the end of the trail. I heard there was a shuttle, I'm not too sure, you might want to look into that, but we were just gonna try and hitch it back to like Forks, I think, which is a big town, and then from there you can probably, get to wherever you want. That kind of brings me to my next topic, going eastbound or westbound. The high majority of the people who do this trail go westbound. I'm not exactly sure why, but that's just how it is. Like I mentioned earlier, this trail goes east-west, west-east, so no matter what, going eastbound or westbound, you're pretty much gonna start at about the same exact time, sometime in June. I think eastbounders can start maybe a week or two earlier, but that's not that big of a difference. I guess I'm biased. I would just recommend going westbound, especially if you want to see more people, because even going westbound, you're probably not going to see a lot of people. If you're going eastbound, you're pretty much guaranteed to see nobody, because you're pretty much going to be the only one heading that direction, so just pick your poison. Alright, what permits do you need to get for the PNT? You need 3. It's for the Glacier National Park, the North Cascades National Park, and the Olympic National Park. The biggest pain in the butt out of those 3 is Glacier National Park. The permit system for that park is just always backed up because it's so popular. I remember it took me 3 hours to get my permit when I did the CDT. This year it was a little easier, I just hopped on somebody else's. And then for the Olympic National Park, that's pretty similar to Glacier National Park, but also I was able to do that one online. I just went to www.recreation.gov. I just did it around on my cell phone, and I was able to apply for my campsites and just get my permit online. And you can pick it up at a ranger station, probably in Port Angeles. Me personally, I didn't pick up my permit before I went to the park because I didn't have access to a car. If you get stopped by a ranger, you can just tell them, hey, I'm a PNT hiker. I didn't have a car, so I couldn't go to Port Angeles, but here's the permit. I have it on my phone, and they're not gonna give you a ticket for that. Okay, navigation and getting lost on the PNT. It's actually not that bad because you're probably going to be using Guthook on the trail, and that app just makes it so easy for you to stay on course. I think I never really got lost on this trail. I would just recommend taking out Guthook and just looking at where you are like every 15-20 minutes or so. But navigating this trail isn't that difficult. PNT is actually starting to mark this trail now, so by the time you hike it, even if it's next year, you're probably going to see a lot of markers on the trail, which is a good thing. So you really don't need to worry too much about getting lost unless you're actually going to be using a map and compass. I'm not sure why you would do that, but I don't know, hike your own hike. As far as resources for this trail goes, I think I mentioned this in my PNT resupply video, but I highly recommend going to the PNT website. It's pnt.org. Pretty much have everything that I'm talking about in this video on their website, and they go into it in much more depth. I'll put a link to that in the description if you want to check that out. Other resources, the PNT Town Guide, I also mentioned that in the resupply video. I'll put a link in the description for that as well. The Facebook group was also a pretty big help. I normally stay away from the Facebook groups, but the PNT is a pretty small trail, so that means there's only like, I don't know, 200 people on the Facebook group, so there's really nobody in there, trolling or whatever. If you're hiking the trail like the AT or the PCT, then I highly don't recommend you go to the Facebook group. It's just don't do that. It's not worth your time. Like I mentioned, Guthook is a good resource as well. There's a subreddit for the PNT on reddit.com, but that one's not very active. Okay, food storage on the PNT. When I was in Grizzly country, I used an Ursack and I did not sleep with my food. I sent home my Ursack in Bonners Ferry, Idaho. I personally didn't really have any issues with mice getting into my food. I know one hiker who did. And honestly, outside of Grizzly country, I do sleep with my food. I know that's like a real touchy subject these days, but I've done that for pretty much every trail. I've never had an issue with anything really. I'll never do it in Grizzly country or any place that has really active bears, but everywhere else there's really not that much of a problem with sleeping with your food. When you're in Glacier National Park, they're gonna require you to hang your food, so make sure you do that. I don't really think there's anything else I need to cover as far as food storage goes. So snow, I know that's one thing that every hiker worries about. You only need to worry about it if you're starting really early, like in early June or something, or maybe mid-June if it's a high snow year. I started June 24th, if I remember correctly, and pretty much had no snow to do with the entire trail. So just pay attention to the snow year. If it's a high snow year, you might want to push back your starting date. If you have to start early, then yeah, I'd recommend bringing an ice axe and micro spikes. Okay, grizzly bears. Kind of just talked about this, but there are grizzlies on the PNT. This is only going to be for the beginning of the trail if you're going westbound in Glacier National Park. You're going to be in grizzly territory from the start of the trail in Glacier through Idaho, which is only going to be like a few days, and then through maybe the first 100, 200 miles of eastern Washington. After that, it's pretty much just black bear country. So I'd say maybe the first 400, 500 miles of the trail, just be aware of the grizzlies, and after that you'll be in the clear. From the Northeast, I'm in Maine right now making this video, and so I'm used to dealing with a lot of ticks. I actually saw a decent amount of ticks when I was in Montana, and I think certain parts of Idaho and Washington. I specifically remember being in Yak, and all of us were finding a decent amount of ticks on us. I found one in my tent, and I found one the next morning crawling on my back. I think that's because the people at the saloon there, they let you camp behind their restaurant, and behind their restaurant it's kind of like tall, unmaintained grass, so that's probably where the ticks came from. Just be aware of that, especially around the Yak area. When I was in the Pasaytens, I found a tick on the back of my head. I had one buddy found a tick on him when he was in Northport. This was after shower and laundry, and somebody else found a tick on them when we were in Oroville, which was also after shower and laundry. So just be aware of it. Make sure you do a tick check every night, no matter what. There's really only one. I think it's called Swift Creek, and that's in the Baker Mountain Wilderness in Washington. If you're going westbound, you really don't need to worry about it. It should be kind of low by the time you get there, but if you're going eastbound, then there's a good chance it might be pretty high. And as of right now, there's no bridge, but the PNTA people told me they're gonna put in a bridge there eventually, just don't know when. So depending on when you're watching this, there might already be a bridge there. If there's not, the ford actually can be kind of rough. I did it after a rainstorm, and I just walked upstream and I found a pretty easy place to cross. The water only got to like little over my knees, and I'm only like 5'8", 5'9", so it wasn't that high. It is moving pretty fast though, so just keep that in mind. Aside from that, there's like one or two other fords that I did on the PNT, and they're both really easy. You can just, walk on through it. There's really only two that I recommend. That's going to be the Northwest Peak alternate and the Lions Head Ridge alternate. I actually made a vlog of both of these alternates, so I'll put them in the description too. If I had to recommend one of those alternates to do, I'd say the Northwest Peak, because there's a little less bushwhacking that you have to do. For the Lions Head Ridge, you have two options. You can either stick to the main route, which is, from what I've heard, a really, really bad bushwhack. Almost everybody that does the PNT does the ridge for that reason, so that's what I recommend. They're both gonna be pretty slow moving, so you might as well just do something where you're actually up high and you have some pretty good views. Aside from that, there's really no other cool alternates that I can think of. I guess one would be in Olympic National Park. You can do the Grand Pass alternate instead of the main route, but I think most people who do the PNT are gonna do that one anyways. I think that's pretty much it for alternates. And last but certainly not the least is water. All right, like I mentioned earlier, this is the Pacific Northwest and it rains a lot, so you really don't have to worry about water on this trail. I had the capacity to carry 3 liters of water, and I only did that one time, and I didn't even come close to actually needing any of that water. Personally, I don't drink that much water. I don't sweat too much, so I just carry 1 liter of water with me at all times, and I just topped it off at every water source I got to. That being said, I do remember there's a few times throughout the trail where the water sources are gonna be like 8 to 10 miles apart, which is, that's not that long of a dry stretch, but if you're not paying attention and you just walk on by your last water source without knowing, I don't know, you might get cotton mouth. All right, I think that about covers most of the topics when it comes to the PNT. I didn't really talk too much in depth about any one subject because I wanted to keep this video shorter than it needs to be. If you want me to expand a little bit on something, or maybe there's something I didn't talk about, just send me a message or leave a comment below. All right, thanks.